For 7 years, my parents introduced me as the dropout. They'd say it casually, like it was a personality trait. Every Thanksgiving, every birthday, every family reunion. Then one night, in the middle of dinner, my uncle's phone buzzed with a breaking news alert. He read the headline out loud, and suddenly, 30 people were staring at me like they had never seen me before. If you've ever had your story twisted by the people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever stayed silent while someone else controlled the narrative, this one is going to stay with you. Subscribe, hit like, and settle in. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need defending. It just needs timing. My name is Ivy Loran. I'm 29 now. At 19, I dropped out of college. That's the version my parents told. Here's the part they left out. I left a prestigious private university halfway through my sophomore year because I was building a software platform that had already gained 40,000 users in beta. I was sleeping 4 hours a night, skipping lectures, coding in bathroom stalls between classes. When I told my parents I was taking a leave to focus on the company, my father stared at me like I'd confessed to a crime. "You're throwing your life away," he said flatly. My mother didn't yell. She did something worse. She sighed. The kind of sigh that carries disappointment like perfume. Meanwhile, my older sister Camille had just been accepted into law school. Full ride, celebrations, champagne, photos. At the next family gathering, my father raised his glass. "To Camille," he said proudly, "our future attorney." Then he glanced at me, and to Ivy, who's exploring alternative paths. Alternative paths. Within 6 months, that turned into something else. "This is Ivy, our college dropout," my mother began telling relatives. She'd laugh lightly after saying it, like it was a harmless joke. People would nod awkwardly. I'd smile, because explaining a startup to people who measure success in degrees felt exhausting. Year 1, I worked from a tiny apartment with peeling paint and unreliable Wi-Fi. Year 2, my co-founder quit. Year 3, we nearly ran out of funding. There were nights I lay on the floor staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, wondering if my parents were right. Maybe I had ruined everything. Meanwhile, Camille's life looked perfect. Clerkships, internships, polished LinkedIn posts. At every holiday, the comparison ritual continued. "Ivy's still figuring things out," my mother would say, slicing turkey with surgical precision. Figuring things out, as if I was lost. They never asked what I was building. They never asked how many users we had. They never asked why I looked exhausted but determined. They preferred the simpler story. Dropout. It's easier to dismiss someone than to understand them. By year 5, my platform had grown into something real. We provided encrypted communication tools for investigative journalists and nonprofit organizations operating in high-risk environments. It wasn't flashy. It was necessary. And it was working. We secured a major grant. Then another. Then private funding. By 28, our user base had crossed 2 million globally. But I never announced it at dinner. Not out of secrecy. Out of self-protection. Because every time I tried to correct the narrative early on, my father would wave it off. Hobby businesses don't replace degrees. So I stopped correcting. I let them talk. Let them build a version of me that made them comfortable. Then came Thanksgiving last year. 32 relatives crammed into my aunt's dining room. The air smelled like roasted rosemary and overcooked green beans. I arrived late because I'd flown in from D.C. after meetings with federal advisors. My mother kissed my cheek stiffly. "Still busy with your little tech thing?" she asked. "Little." I nodded. Still. Dinner started. Wine poured. Conversations overlapped. Halfway through the meal, my father tapped his fork against his glass. "Before dessert," he announced, "I just want to say how proud we are of Camille. She's just been promoted to senior associate." Applause filled the room. Then he added, casually like muscle memory, and Ivy, well, she's always marched to her own beat. A few chuckles. There it was again. The setup. The subtle humiliation wrapped in humor. I felt heat rise up my neck. My hands curled under the table. "Breathe," I told myself. Across the table, Uncle Robert's phone buzzed loudly. He glanced down, then frowned. "Wait," he muttered. Another buzz. Someone else's phone lit up. Then another. The room shifted. Conversation slowed. Uncle Robert squinted at his screen. "You've got to be kidding me." "What?" my aunt asked. He cleared his throat. "This says, breaking, Secure Bridge CEO Ivy Loron testifies before Senate panel on global data protection standards." The words hung in the air. Secure Bridge. That's my company. Silence spread across the table like spilled wine. My father blinked. My mother's smile froze. Camille looked confused. Uncle Robert turned his phone around. And there I was, on the screen, in a navy blazer, sitting behind a nameplate that read, Ivy Loron, Chief Executive Officer. Every head slowly turned toward me. No one laughed. No one clapped. They just stared. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. From release. 7 years of swallowed explanations. 7 years of being reduced to a label. My father spoke first. "This must be a mistake." His voice lacked its usual certainty. "It's not," I said quietly. My mother grabbed her own phone, fingers trembling slightly. The article loaded. The headline mentioned a $180 million valuation after our latest funding round. Someone at the table whispered, "That's huge." Camille stared at me like I'd just spoken a different language. "You're the CEO?" she asked. "Yes." The room felt smaller. My father leaned back slowly. "You never told us," he said. There it was. Not congratulations. Not pride. Accusation. I met his eyes. "You never asked." The same words I'd rehearsed in my head for years. No anger in my voice. Just fact. Uncle Robert started laughing, not mockingly but in disbelief. "You've been calling her a dropout?" No one answered. Phones kept lighting up. More articles. Interviews. Clips. The narrative they'd repeated for 7 years collapsed in real time. My mother tried to recover. "Well, we always knew Ivy was smart." But the room wasn't buying it, because everyone remembered the jokes, the sighs, the tone. And in that moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, like a building that had survived a storm. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list accomplishments. I just said, I left school because I had something worth building. Then I picked up my fork and continued eating. The shift was immediate. Relatives who once avoided career conversations with me now ask questions. Real ones. How did you scale so fast? What's it like testifying before Congress? My father barely spoke for the rest of dinner. For once, he wasn't controlling the narrative. And here's the part that mattered most. When dessert was served, my mother leaned closer and whispered, "You should have corrected us." I looked at her calmly. "I tried. You preferred your version." She didn't respond, because she knew it was true. The revenge wasn't public humiliation. It was visibility, truth amplified, and it didn't require me tearing anyone down. It just required me outgrowing the story they told about me. Here's what I learned. Your worth is not defined by someone else's narrative, especially not by people who never asked for your side. Setting boundaries with family isn't betrayal. It's self-respect. And the most powerful response to cruelty isn't revenge. It's building something so grounded in truth that lies can't survive around it. I was never the dropout. I was just early. If this story stayed with you, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had someone define you incorrectly, only to prove them wrong later? And subscribe for more stories about resilience, quiet comebacks, and the kind of success that doesn't need permission. Because sometimes the headline says everything.